and I wish to express our gratitude to members of this House, more particularly the Labour Party, for their valuable contribution to today's discussions on drug policy, and I want to really acknowledge the depth of their interest and commitment to this critical issue. And as already stated by Minister Jennifer Mann O'Connor, the Government will not be opposing the motion. This Government remains committed to a health-led approach to drug use, firmly believing that individuals experiencing problematic drugs should be met with compassion, dignity and appropriate care. The health-led approach to drug use is set out in the National Drug Strategy. The Government's priority is to develop a successor strategy to cover the period 2026 to 2029. The development of the successor strategy is informed by an evaluation of the current strategy and by consultation with stakeholders. In addition, we will take into account the recommendation of the Citizens' Assembly on drug use, which many have already referenced today, the interim report of the Joint Committee on Drug Use and the Proposal for Government and the EU Drug Strategy. The Minister for Health and the Minister of State with responsibility for the National Drug Strategy, Minister Jennifer Mann O'Connor, published the independent evaluation of the drug strategy, which was committed in the Proposal for Government. During this evaluation, 68 stakeholders participated in consultation sessions and additional written submissions were received. This inclusive process aimed to capture a broad spectrum of perspectives, including those of service providers, statutory bodies, civil society organisations and individuals with lived experience. The independent evaluation assessed the strategy in 4 areas: impact, governance, performance and coherence with international policies. I note the opportunities and challenges outlined in the report findings. The National Drug Strategy has made progress in advancing a health-led approach, particularly through the expansion of harm reduction initiatives such as naloxone distribution and drug checking services. The evaluation identified a number of positive findings, including the introduction of strategic implementation groups, strengthening interagency collaboration at local level, improved data collection and monitoring, which enables sight of the changing profile of drug users and how prevalent cocaine use has become in Irish society. The strategy is well aligned with international frameworks, particularly the EU drug strategy. The independent evaluation also notes some challenges, including delivery of prevention and early intervention initiatives and the need for alternatives to coercive sanctions. The report presents 10 strategic recommendations for the development of an integrated, equitable and outcome-focused strategy. They include the right to health for people who use drugs, providing culturally sensitive and appropriate services for all groups, equitable access to services and strengthened prevention and early intervention initiatives. These will now be incorporated into the new strategy. To further inform the development of the next strategy, the Department held a number of in-person consultations with key stakeholders. Over 240 people attended the consultations. These include representatives of drugs and alcohol task forces from across the country, drug service providers and civil society organisations. The consultation report has been published and circulated to the Joint Committee on Drug Use. Looking at the Citizens' Assembly on Drug Use, the Citizens' Assembly on Drug Use recognised the value of listening to citizens of Ireland in relation to our approach to the issue of drugs. The Government has committed to responding to the recommendation of the Citizens' Assembly on Drug Use. The Department of Health has engaged with all relevant Government departments to develop a considered response to each of the recommendations, which will in turn be incorporated into the successor National Drug Strategy. At the high-level segment of the 67th session of the United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs, the Irish Government submitted a pledge for action by stating the Irish Government committed to carefully consider and respond with urgency to the Assembly's recommendations for reform of the legislation, policy and operational approach to drug use, and to indicate the time frame for implementing the recommendations which it accepts. Under drug prevention and education, and we cannot underestimate the importance of prevention and education in tackling drug use. A wealth of international evidence shows us that by investing in evidence-based drug prevention interventions, we can reduce the negative impact of drug use for the person, their families and their communities. The Department of Health has made significant strides regarding its approach to drug prevention. And in 2023, a funding scheme totaling £1.5 million was awarded to 5 projects to implement a range of evidence-based drug prevention interventions across the country. And in line with the Citizens' Assembly, the Department of Health is currently working with the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime to implement their review of prevention systems, project to assess our national approach to drug prevention. We have rolled out training developed by the European Drugs Agency on effective approaches to drug prevention to over 50 people. And in terms of drug-related intimidation, it's a serious and insidious issue impacting individuals, families and communities nationwide. It is a complex problem that manifests differently across regions, often leaving victims fearful and powerless. Intimidation can involve demands for repayment of perceived drug debts or opportunistic extortion, and its relentless nature poses significant risk to health and well-being. In May, the Minister of State for National Drug Strategy and the Minister for Justice launched a major awareness campaign to reduce stigma surrounding drug-related intimidation and violence, while promoting the range of supports available to those affected. The DRIVE project, which is supported by the Department of Health, Department of Justice and Garda Síochána and many other stakeholders, aims to build community capacity to support victims and tackle the root cause of intimidation and violence. DRIVE reflects the partnership approach at the heart of the National Drug Strategy and aligns with the recommendations from the Citizen Assembly. And the Government is fully committed in its support for Garda Síochána efforts to dismantle criminal gangs involved in the supply of drugs, and their work with international partners to tackle the trafficking of drugs for the Irish market. The Garda National and Organised Crime Bureau has seized over 627 million in illicit drugs and made over 1,700 arrests for drug trafficking, money laundering, possession of firearms and other offences since its establishment 10 years ago. Last year, the enactment of the Criminal Justice Engagement of Children in Criminal Activity Act. This legislation, we saw the enactment of that Act, the Criminal Justice Engagement of Children in Criminal Act, that was enacted last year. This legislation criminalises adults who either force or encourage children to engage in any criminal activity, recognising the lifelong impact on a child of involvement in criminal activity. Ireland is playing an active role in the development of the next EU Drug Strategic Framework and Action Plan. The Irish delegation has contributed strongly to thematic debates on various aspects of drug policy at meetings of the EU Council Horizontal Working Party on Drugs. The EU Horizontal Working Party on Drugs. These meetings will inform the next EU drug strategy, which is currently being drafted by the EU Commission and is due to be presented by the Commission to Member States before the end of the year. And in conclusion, the Government will carefully consider and respond to recommendations of the Citizen Assembly on drug use, oversight the implementation of programmes for government commitments, including those related to drug policy, will be provided by the Cabinet Committee on Health. A steering group has been established to guide the development of the successor national drug strategy. This process is supported by a reference group comprising of service providers and individuals with lived experiences. A draft strategy expected to be submitted to the Minister of State responsible for drug strategy by December of 2025 this year, and it is intended that the successor national drug strategy, along with a 2-year action plan, will be published in 2026 with a subsequent action plan envisaged for the period 2028 to 2029. Thank you.